Hi there. It's Elaine Lindsay of True Social Media, and I'm your host for Business Banter Plus TV. At True Social Media, we make social media, online video, and search optimization easy peasy for you so that you can really rock it out in your unique business. Here at BBPTV, we have amazing guests that share their digital biz adventures and other things. Who they are, what they do, why they do it, and perhaps a tip on how you too can be successful in your unique business related to what it is that they do. And I'm going to say quick hello there to my guest. My guest today is Rebekkah Hanson, and I am so excited to chat with Rebekkah because this is a little bit different for me. I'm used to talking to mostly business people, but I saw Rebekkah doing an interview and I was absolutely captivated. Rebekkah is an intuitive abundance astrologer and numerologist. And she has, get this, 40 years of experience doing this. Wow. Hi there, Rebekkah.
Hi, Elaine. Nice to see you.
Oh, yeah, it's really good to see you. Now, I want to tell you folks that it's incredible. Rebekkah has such an incredible history. It really does not just go all over the map, but it does go all over the map. She's been helping humanity in places like Zimbabwe, New Zealand, an orphanage in Zambia. You just have such an incredible life. I'm hoping we get to talk about what you actually do because there's just so much there. But
yeah, I just really love helping people. And when you get out of this, even here in this country, but with orphanages and stuff in South Africa, it was amazing. Totally amazing.
Yes, and also you work with indigenous tribes in Costa Rica, I believe.
I did.
Now, here's the really cool thing. You worked in surgery medical field for a very long time.
I did.
And alongside that, she also does wedding photography. Okay, this is just such an incredible ball of wow. Rebekkah is a speaker and a spiritual teacher who has coached entrepreneurs and individuals worldwide. She incorporated numerology, I guess, quite a bit later into her astrology, but her astrology chart, you use divining the numerical energies from traditional avenues of birth date, birth name, and current name, which I think is really kind of cool that the current name gets in there as well.
It does, and the numerical value of your current name is very, very important. It's an energetic value that you carry with you just wherever you go. So it's amazingly huge.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to figure that out. Okay. So I think what I want to start is just asking, like, why astrology? How did you know that this was for you, and what led you to that path?
I've had, when I look back, the whole story was pretty incredible. It found me. I didn't pursue it. During my first marriage in the early 70s, my brother-in-law came up to me and said, I have somebody here that I need to introduce you to. And as this man shook my hand, he said, I'm here to teach you astrology.
Wow.
And I mean, I had never met him before, and he proceeded to give me homework, start teaching, come over every couple of weeks. I guess my brother-in-law at the time just had the insight to know that this is something that would really align with me, and made the connection. And I've carried it with me ever since, and I've never stopped learning about it. I still learn today. I go to several meetup groups. I'm always learning online from other astrologers. It's just my mission.
Well, I believe in your bio, it said something about you got together with a group of like-minded astrologers and you read each other.
Yeah, I was for several years, I was a member of the Colorado Fellowship of Astrologers here, and we would get together and play around and look at each other's charts and so forth, and align it up with the current transits that were going on. And I would look at somebody's chart and go, so you have some issues right now with such and such and such and such. And the other folks in the room would go, Rebekah, where do you see that? And what happens for me is that I'm very fluent reading astrology, but I also go intuitive with it. And that's one of the main reasons why I record my sessions, because people would ask me, would you please repeat what you just said? And I had no idea. So that's where the intuitive piece came in. And of course, now I record all my, full sessions.
And I just want you watching to know, this is not something fluffy on a top level. We're talking very, very deep into your charts with things I'd never even heard of before. When I heard your interview with Laura, I was absolutely fascinated by the depths that you went to in talking about things that could help people in business to do with their astrology.
Yeah, it's, part of my mission, I think, is to get people to understand that astrology is not just for Sunday morning newspaper entertainment. It's a roadmap for so many things, and I could totally geek out on you here and go into all the different facets of it. But just to give you an idea, I don't know if you remember Donald Reagan, who was President Reagan's chief of staff.
Yes.
He said that it's common knowledge that a large part of Wall Street uses astrology. People don't hear about
that. I'm match you on that, because I believe it was it FDR? One of the Roosevelts said that billionaires are made with their astrologers, or
J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan
is he was in deposition in court, and quoted as saying anybody can be successful anybody can be a millionaire, but in order to be a billionaire, you have to use an astrologer. And you're talking about the presidents. President Teddy Roosevelt was very interested in astrology. He had a horoscope that was mounted on his chessboard in the Oval Office. Wow. And when somebody would ask about it, he would say, I always keep my weather eye on the opposition of my 7th house moon to my 1st house Mars. Now, you don't hear the average person talking like that. This man knew he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's out there, and people just don't realize it. And you can use it for your business. And there are some really simple, easy tools that the novice can do. I would recommend, the Old Farmer's Almanac has a lot of astrology information in it. But if somebody really wants to keep up with the planets and where they're moving to and so forth, Jim Maynard has a book, A Small Pocket Astrologer, that is really handy. And it's, I don't know, under $10, I think. You could probably Google Jim Maynard's name and find it. But
yeah, well, I'll be sure and have that available for our audience when we're done.
Okay.
Because I think that's also really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And in terms of that, would you say that a lot of your clientele, is it aimed at business?
Because of all the events that I've been going to, I was actually at 15 different events last year. I run into a lot of entrepreneurs, and when I first started, I thought, man, I'm going to be around accountants and attorneys and all these business people that are not interested in astrology and really going to judge me harshly, when in fact what happened is people found out and they're like, wow, you're an astrologer? I want to hear more. So I have done so many different kinds, working with relationships, working with parents of small children, forecasting dates. What's really fun is to work with entrepreneurs in forecasting their launch dates or book releases or when they're going to speak, because we've all done the same thing 2 different days, and one day it flows and the other day we hit roadblock after roadblock, and astrology is a roadmap for that.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
If you are at all interested in astrology, I know some people have heard some of the things we've been talking about, but yes, there are a lot of people that will, reference their astrologer when they're going to launch a book or when they're going to do a big speak. And I'm so excited because this brings us around to that little piece that totally fascinated me in your talk, because I knew nothing about this void of course moon. And
yeah,
it just resonated.
Yeah, the void of course moon. I think if your audience thinks about it, most people realize that from a new moon to a full moon and back to the new moon again is a complete month cycle. And during that time, the moon goes through all the signs in the zodiac. It takes approximately 28 days to complete that full month cycle. So the moon spends around 2.5 days in each sign. Each sign in the full 360-degree circle is 30 degrees. So as the moon is traveling through one of those signs, one of those houses, it comes to a point where it's not making any aspects to any other planets. In other words, if most of the planets are in the first few degrees of whatever house they're in, and the moon moves to the last degrees of that 30-degree house, then it's not making any aspects to those other planets. That is what's called the void of course moon. And what happens during that time, and that period of time, like if there's a planet that is like 29 degrees into a particular sign, that time frame's just going to last a very, very short period of time, or it could last up to a day or two. Usually it's around 2-3 hours to maybe half a day. It depends on how everything else is moving. What happens to people during that void, of course, is that they just let their guard down. They just want to relax. So if an entrepreneur has a 3-day event and they're going to present their upsell, whatever, or sell a book or whatever it is, and they present it to people during that void of course moon, people are going to just let it fly over their head and not really absorb it as well as if the moon was not void of course. If you want them to remember something, do it when it is not a void of course moon.
That's such a good point. And you were talking about also that was a good time to get things passed that you didn't want people to fight about.
Yeah, Nancy Reagan, when she announced that her and President Reagan use astrologers, she made that announcement intentionally during a void of course moon because she didn't want a lot of press about it. Anytime that Ronald Reagan wanted the people of the United States to really anchor into what he was saying, and when he wanted to take credit for something really good, he would make sure it was when the void of course moon was not happening. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to work with. And
I was thinking, from a political standpoint, that's a great time to maybe pass a bill that's not going to be all that popular, or something,
or at least announce it during that time. Yeah.
Pardon?
At least announce it during the time that it's void of course. Because there are things that you should be doing, however, during a void of course moon. Like, for instance, if you own a yoga studio and you want people to get into that relaxed alpha state, do it during the void of course moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's also a good time to organize. I mean, when it's interesting. I put a post on Facebook here a while back going, man, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm trying to pump out some material, trying to get some copyright for my website, and I just can't even concentrate. So, of course, I go and check, where's that old moon? And it was void, of course. And I'm going, okay, this girl's taking a nap. I'm getting up when the moon is gone into the next sign so that I can get some work done. It'll be, and that's the key to it, is being in tune with those cycles so that you can be productive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, people can't argue with the fact that the moon affects the tides. I mean, even if you're not deep into astrology, you have to understand that there are these connections.
Yeah, absolutely. And our bodies are mostly water. Our brains, I think, are something like 80 to 85% water. It affects people. You mentioned earlier that I was in the medical profession. It was nothing when I was making rounds through the hospital to come across nurses in the emergency room going, do we have enough staff next weekend? Because, you know, there's a full moon and people are going to get crazy.
Yeah, yeah. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of, okay, entrepreneurs, I think basically having an astrologer or having an abundance astrologer like you will really give a leg up in making sure that the times you do things are most appropriate for you.
Yeah, yeah. I would never recommend that somebody do a launch like during a Mercury retrograde. There's so many, it's so multifaceted. You have to look at so many things. The retrogrades, everybody knows about Mercury retrograde, I think. Well, all planets have their retrograde motion. With Mercury deals with communications, and Mercury has a reputation of being the trickster of the zodiac. Yeah. And that's why you hear so much more about Mercury. I actually, you know, when I go to these events, I will run a chart for the start of that particular event, if it's a 2-day, 3-day, whatever, 1 day, just to see what the energy and the celestial climate is doing. And I went to an event last year that was a 4-day event. It was a big event. There was 800 or 1,000 people there. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun because Mercury's retrograde. Let's just see what's going to happen, right? And, you know, it's not usually, depending on if it hits something in your own chart or in the chart of your business. And yes, businesses can have an astrology chart, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a whole nother talk on its own. But with this particular event, the very first thing out of the gate, all their printers jammed up, and they had all these people coming in, and they couldn't print name tags. Now, was it the end of the world? No. But was it a hassle? You bet.
Oh, yeah.
You bet. So, yeah, that's the sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they each have retrograde, but they all are related to different areas.
Right. So Mercury rules communication, short journeys, things like that, brothers and sisters. We had a Venus retrograde last year, and Venus deals with things like your internal value system, your relationships, and money. Mercury deals with the writing of contracts, where Venus will deal with the money component in contracts. So I had a lot of people coming to me saying, you know, I just got started in a relationship. And I'm like, give it a little bit of time, because Venus is retrograde, and you want to really take your time and not overcommit yourself until after that period of time, which, you know, I just told people, just slow down and just be cautious and just wait. Lots of times what you find is that a situation that happened in the past will come back and revisit you. And with Venus dealing with relationships, lots of times what happens is that an old ex will show up at your doorstep or on the phone and say, hey, you want to get together for coffee? So it's really fun to follow. Now, Venus isn't going to even be retrograde this year. It doesn't go retrograde until March of, I think it's 2017. But Mars is going to go retrograde, and Mars is a very adventuresome sort of little guy. Can be a trailblazer, can be very hot-headed. Tempers can flare. As long as you are aware, though, when these are happening, then it's your responsibility, because that's the point of where you're in choice. You can, and I always tell my clients, you've got 3 choices. You can respond, you can react, or you can appease and totally not even move on it one way or the other. But the power point in that decision is your ability to choose. It's free will trumps all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that was part of what drew me to you, because I work with a spiritual mentor that my son calls the holistic missile. and her end all be all is 2 things. Choose what effect you're going to have, and always be in choice.
Yep.
The moment you react, you're no longer driving.
Yep. Yeah. It's you know, and that's why I like to work with the astrology, especially. I do numerology, and I also use human design. I don't know if you're aware of what human design is, but the astrology piece gives me a big, huge roadmap for people and letting them know when something is coming up. Like the Mars retrograde, that's going to start April 17th. Well, if you know what is coming up, and you know what house that it sits in your own chart, you know what area of your life could possibly be affected. Now, if that particular planet, if Mars comes across something that is really triggering a strong point in your own personal natal chart, you better believe you're going to feel it in one way or another and have some decisions to make over it.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much to it. Like, you really, there's an awful lot of work involved in what you do. Like calculations.
There is. I mean, I have like ongoing classes that when I'm able to get on the phone and screen share to several people at one time. But when I sit down and actually do a full session with somebody, there's several hours worth of research that leads up to that.
Wow.
Yeah. I love it though.
Well, yeah, and that's obvious. Your passion comes through in everything you say, which I think is incredible. And you know, you did a lot of research into your field to know that, you know, about JP Morgan and about Teddy Roosevelt and the Reagans and what have you. And it's funny, but I think we've come to a place where the past, I would say, I don't know, 10 years, people have started being more conscious, and people are realizing that these things are available to us to help us, and people are more open, I think.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that. I mean, the consciousness of the planet is definitely changing. Now, I will say, when a person gets to the point of where they are so intuitive, they won't need any of these modalities at all. I think the majority of the people are a long ways away from that, and until that point, this is one of the tools that they can use to help them. And just like me, when I'm doing somebody's chart and I go intuitive, it's usually spurred by something that I see through the modality. And not that I can't do a reading that is just totally intuitive, because I do. It's just easier for me to explain to my clients what's going on once they see something moving in their astrology chart. It's a tool that is more physical for them to relate with. And it's a pretty multifaceted way of looking into things for sure.
So you talked about charts, and I know you have charts with
I've always
you
got charts.
that we can show people, because it is to me that there's so much involved.
Mm-hmm.
You must continue to learn, and I think that's why you're so passionate about what you do, because you're maintaining that learning, and I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I do. I love it. One of the it's interesting. I mean, I've always got something in front of me that I'm looking at, but the cool thing is that the universe never stands still. You know, it's like, okay, what are we getting prepared for now? This whole year is really a powerful year because of the, and I'm going to give you a geek out warning here because I'm getting pretty. My apologies, I just can't help it. We have a situation between three big planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune, going on right now, that when these guys dance together in the sky, there's always a huge shift, a huge transformation, or something that comes up. Though one of the times in history that these three were all triggered together was when the Berlin Wall came down, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you feel it not only on the personal level, but you feel it on just all over the planet, and it can affect. I can go back and look when there was a major earthquake and relate it to that particular area, and actually see astrologically what were some of the big forces that were at play, that were dancing at play. Yeah.
So take me through your day in terms of your astrology. What is it? Something you refer to daily, or are you past that because you're so intuitive?
No, I try not. You know, the moment I get arrogant and saying I don't need something is when I'm going to need it. That's just Murphy's Law in my world. I do make decisions for myself based on a gut feeling rather than from my head anymore, because I know that's just how I'm built and how I should do that. Human design helped me get in touch with that piece a lot. But what I do is on my calendar, on my appointment calendar, I always have Jupiter is going to go retrograde and it's going to stay retrograde until X date, and I know when it's pulling out of that retrograde. Because I have my hands in it so much, though, I mean, I designed a whole year's worth of curriculum for my ongoing designer dates class, and I ran the new moon and the full moon chart, and then looked at various different aspects that were going to be important for each month, because I had my hands in that all the time. I've got it at my fingertips and I can look it up. Plus, I mean, I've got like my astrology program. I can look at any particular date. I can pull up a time when I know the moon is going to be void of course. It's I just, because of the way my life is constructed, I usually know when what is up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that makes perfect sense. So tell us a little bit about this human design.
Okay, human design came about in, I think it was 1989. So it is fairly new to the planet in relationship to something like astrology, which has been going on for 5,000 years or something. Human design is a combination of Eastern and Western astrology, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, the chakra system, and quantum physics.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a mouthful for people to digest when
Yeah.
when they realize that. And it is just as multifaceted as astrology is, and it does use astrology in it. I kind of have a heads up because I was pretty fluent in astrology going into it, but it deals with, you know, I guess one of the tools that that caught my eye up front, and this is even without going very deep into it, is that I realized how it is that I need to show up so that people could best get who I am, and also how I process my decisions and what is the best way to do that. So it's given me some real good tools to work with. And when I do my full 90-minute sessions with people, I incorporate all three modalities.
Wow.
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes it very powerful.
Yeah. And then there's always, and that leaves people on total overload and they have to go back and re-listen. And then if there's follow-up calls, usually there's questions after people go through that 90 minutes because they're like so flooded with information. They always feel validated. What's so interesting about all of this, that I really, I hear it all the time from people and I just know it, is that we were all born perfect. We were all born unique. We're all an individual puzzle piece to all of humanity. And what are there? All over the planet. What happens, though, is that because our parents didn't have a parenting manual, because they didn't have the roadmap of these modalities and who this little baby was that came into the world and how they can best show up, there's imprinting that happens. And so, I love being around like 3 and 4-year-olds because they're just so brutally honest, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're very authentic. They are not censored at all. But as children start going into school, and I think, up until age 7, that's your most impressionable years, we as a society and parents and schools are teaching kids things that they definitely need to learn to be able to live in society. But at the same time, they're imprinting on these kids something that is not in alignment or authentic to who they are. And once people realize this and start hearing, once they get a reading from an astrologer and the astrologer reminds them of who they really, really are deep down, all of a sudden, I've had people in tears 5 minutes into a session because they've finally been heard for who they really are. And it just gives them the permission to show up real. It's very humbling. It's very honoring for me to be in that position for people. It's such a gift.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
it must feel wonderful to be able to help people see who they are.
It really, it's magical. It is. It's very magical. And it's just a realignment with who they really are. I just happen to be the conduit or whatever astrologer they're using, or my feeling is that, let's take an entrepreneur, for instance. If you're not aligned with who you are authentically, people feel it. And they trust you more when you are showing up real.
Yeah.
I use the used car salesman.
Yeah.
You always can tell if somebody's, I don't know if it's body language or if you're just walking into their auric field and you really sense it, but on some level, people know. And to get into or back to who you really are and take that mask off that we've been wearing, that society had us think we had to wear, you're much more approachable. You're much more, people trust you better. And it's so helpful in businesses.
Yeah, no, I would think that you would have a lot more energy and be a lot more present when you don't have to waste the time creating the other persona.
Oh my gosh, it's work. It's hard work wearing a mask all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it would be. I get, maybe I'm just intrinsically lazy because it's
I
so
don't
much
think so.
easier to just be who you are.
It is. It totally is. And I think, I mean, I'm sure you feel that people respond to you really well. You are very much of a communicator. You know, when you're comfortable, it's interesting because I had my own journey with this too, right?
Yeah.
I'm a very strong, a very powerful sort of person. My mantra used to be my strength was my biggest weakness, because I would go into a room and people would immediately know I was there, and they either instantly liked me or instantly disliked me. And I had a gal after I went through this. I mean, for me, it's definitely been a growth process of my own, as well as empowering my clients to grow. And this gal said, you know, Rebekah, now that you're finally real, it's like you've taken a cloak off and I'm no longer afraid of you. And I stepped totally into my power when that had taken place.
Wow.
So when you are wearing that mask and covering up who you really are, people they can't grab their teeth into it. They can't embrace it. They can't understand. They know that there's something that's not in alignment and they don't know what it is, so they don't trust it. When you step into who you really are, they know what they're dealing with. And along with that growth, I'll tell you what, comes a lot of humbleness.
Yeah.
Because you've been through some of the turmoils and stuff that will make you humble. And I'll tell you what, it's a pleasure. I'm humbled every time I watch somebody else go through that growth. And I certainly don't take the credit for it. Yeah, I know how to read astrology and stuff, but it's my clients that are doing the growing, not me.
But I bet it feels great.
It does. I get all, I mean, I get so juiced up with it. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I just want to help everybody I can. And anytime a friend or a friend of the family has a baby, I'm like checking out what time they were born, and what their human design chart is, and what their numbers are, and what their astrology chart looks like. And I'm da 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 da. It's like, okay, I know how you need to raise this child, but I have to sit back and go, they have to ask me first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's got to be the hardest part.
Oh, it is. It totally is. Because you've got this stuff that can really help people, but you've got to respect each person's journey.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, because we're not ready until we're ready.
Yep.
Which sounds kind of.
And I'm the same way. I mean, I'm not putting myself on the top of the heap by any means, because I've done my own growth, and I know I'm continuing to grow, and that there are plenty of people out there that can show me way more than what I know now. So I'm certainly not putting myself on the top of the heap. But when you see people that are not using some of the tools that can really help them, it's you want to help them.
Absolutely. It does make me sad for people
Yeah.
when they're not at their full potential, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that that's part of your authenticity as well, is the fact that you understand there's always more learning.
Yeah.
There's always something else. And I think I tend to gravitate to people like that because, I always aim to be 1% better every day in some facet. And I think that's important as a human, as being part of society, to push yourself to improve. Wherever you can.
Well, and we were put on this planet to be creators.
Yes.
It's just plain and simple. We are co-creators of the universe, and it's just our birthright to be doing that. And if you're not doing that, for me anyway, it just feels hollow.
Yeah. So if you were to talk to our audience and basically say, Now, you have mentioned entrepreneurs a lot, and I think that's awesome because that's, right in my bailiwick is entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a little tip or suggestion that they could implement in their lives, be it business or personal, that they could do right away that would perhaps help in some way?
Well, I would say watch the phases of the moon. It's pretty easy to do. If you go outside and you look up at the sky and the moon is all black, it's a new moon. And a new moon is always a good time to be starting new projects. You want to open up that project and develop it while the moon is gaining light towards a full moon.
Ah.
And then once it gets past that full moon, it's a time to start looking at what could I have done better. It's time to kind of tear down or rake in all the crumbs and see what worked, what didn't work, and then start getting an idea of the new seeds or the new project you want to start all over again at the next new moon.
Right.
That would be the first thing that I would say. The next thing that I would say is when you have access to things like the Farmer's Almanac that can tell you, and there's calendars that you can get out everywhere that will tell you what sign the moon is in. Like if it's in a fire sign, the moon is either in a fire sign, an earth sign, an air sign.
Water.
I'm sorry?
Or water sign?
Or a water sign.
Okay.
And each sign, like for instance, Aries is a fire sign. It's very combustible, very full of energy. Taurus is an earth sign, and it's very grounded. Air signs are very intellectual, and water signs are very emotional and intuitive. Now, if you have, like, let's say, a brick and mortar business, and you had the opportunity to watch your clientele as they come and go, you're going to find that if the moon is in a water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, people will be making decisions from an emotional point of view.
Ah.
In an air sign, they're going to mentally think it out first and justify it in that way. If it's an earth sign, they're going to be very grounded. And in a fire sign, they have that creativity and that spark to them. So that would be the next step that I would look at, is what sign is the moon moving through. It's pretty interesting to watch. And then, of course, the void of course moon, which granted, I've got a professional astrology program that tells me down to the minute for here in Denver, Colorado, where the moon is at and whether or not it's void of course. But that's another piece of information, especially if you're planning something. You want to make sure that you hit the timing. Sometimes waiting 1 hour can make a big difference on the attention span of the people you're dealing with.
Wow, that in itself is an incredible gem. I mean, they're all incredible. But yeah, that's a really good point, because if it's only the matter of an hour or a couple of hours,
Mm-hmm.
then it really behooves you to figure that out.
It does.
Yeah, people who launch books and any kind of big project like that, you definitely want to be sure that you've got as much aligned as you possibly can.
And I mean, if you've got any money on the line with something big, some kind of enterprise that is big like that, contact an astrologer, pay an astrologer some money to figure it out. The timing is huge. One of the people in my year-long program was going to get married, and they're setting the wedding date and asked my opinion of it. And I said, well, first of all, it's a Mercury retrograde.
Ooh.
Yeah, which, it's probably not going to make or break the marriage, but do you really want to have to go in and redo the contract after the fact? Or, it's that trickster thing. You want things to go smooth. I photographed weddings for 10 years, and my first thing I would say to people was plan it as well as you could and then go with the flow on the day, right? If that day happens to be on a Mercury retrograde, you might have some things to deal with. But that particular day, and I don't know how many people realize this, but during this next Mercury retrograde, there is going to be a Mercury eclipse.
Oh.
And that's when they had planned their wedding.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, please, I would never, I didn't tell them what to do, but I said, you might want to rethink this, because they're kind of amateur astrologers to start with. And once I pointed out that not only is it a Mercury retrograde, but that it is a eclipse, Mercury eclipse, they're like, huh. And so this month I found out that they changed their date.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was happy. I was very happy about that. But yeah, May 9th, I think it is, when the eclipse is. And it's going to be a powerful time for people to really pay attention to how they communicate. I wouldn't be signing any contracts on that day, for sure.
Good to know.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, good to know. May 9th, no contracts.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, all of these things really are fascinating, and we're going to make sure that everybody can contact you. We'll have all your information with links to your website. And I know for a fact you have different programs that you offer. And I cannot say thank you enough. This has been absolutely fascinating to me. And I think as we become more and more conscious, more and more people are understanding that we have to take into account everything that's around us. Mm-hmm. It all matters. It all matters. But I love the idea of at least knowing, what the moon's doing, where you mm-hmm. are in the new moon, old moon cycle. Old moon, mm-hmm. maybe not a great way to say that.
I would highly recommend that people start following that and just paying attention. And one way, if you are an entrepreneur and you did some kind of a launch that didn't go too well, go back and see what it was and how that aligned up with your own birth chart. There are websites that you can print your birth chart out on, and you can start to learn one little inch at a time. There's a lot of information out there, and of course, you can always get a hold of an astrologer. There's a lot of us around, I'll tell you.
And Rebekkah's very, very good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to say thank you. We could keep doing this forever because I've got a gazillion questions. I thank you for allowing us to peek into your world and giving us some really, really excellent tips for things that people can easily do. For those that want to get a little more involved, go to Business Banter Plus TV, and we'll give you directions right to Rebekkah's site. Rebekkah is the Abundance Astrologer and Numerologist. I thank you so much for being here with us today, Rebekkah.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been a joy. You are a joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's Elaine Lindsay, Truth Social Media, and the host of Business Banter Plus TV. I'll see you again in 2 weeks when we're going to have a surprise guest for a little bit of a change. Thanks, Rebekkah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.